Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Hey guys. All right. I am homesick from Epic History TV, so I need to watch another one. First Crusade part 1 of 2. Obviously, I'm going to do part 2. Fred. Oh, you're like creepily looking. I got a different Fred picture. There you go. There you go. All right. If you're new to the channel, hello. My name's Connor. I like to learn about history through YouTube recommendations. Go on the Discord, guys. The link is right below the link to this original link. It's at the top of the description. Okay, let's do it. Everything's good. Everything is set. How you guys doing, by the way? Doing good? If you're not, I hope you're good soon. Emotions are a fickle thing. Let's do it. This is my favorite channel, until proven otherwise.
Europe and the Middle East were divided between Christian states, or Christendom, and Muslim states.
If I have sauce on my face somewhere, sorry, I had lunch.
They were uneasy neighbors and frequently at war. On the front line, the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire, the major Christian power in the Eastern Mediterranean. But in the 11th century, a powerful new force emerged that threatened its very survival. The Seljuk Turks, originally from Central Asia, migrated...
I'm going to say this again. If you're new to my channel, I'm not the best learner. I have ADD, terrible attention span. I want to learn, okay? I want to create a great atmosphere on YouTube and everything, but not at the expense of me learning, so I will back up if I have to.
South, Seljuk Turks,
like that,
originally from Central Asia, migrated south, converted to Sunni Islam, and carved out a great empire for themselves. In 1071, at the...
Alright, sorry.
In 1071, at the Battle of Manzikert, the Seljuk Turks inflicted a crushing defeat on the Byzantine Empire. They went on to conquer most of Anatolia. Cities such as Nicaea and Antioch, rich in Christian history, fell to the Seljuk Turks. In 1092, the Great Seljuk...
Were both of those cities in the Alexander the Great one too? I think Alexander the Great was the first series I did on this channel, but those sound familiar.
Antioch, rich in Christian history, fell to the Seljuk Turks. In 1092, the great Seljuk Sultan Malik Shah died, and his empire began to fragment. The Byzantine Empire came under renewed attack as local warlords sought territory and plunder. In 1095, Byzantine Emperor Alexius I Comnenus wrote to Pope Urban II, making a desperate appeal for military aid from his fellow Christians in the West. It wasn't the first such appeal by the emperor, but this time the results would be unlike anything ever seen before.
Deus Volt. If you're not ready to learn, just get the hell out of here, alright?
Pope Urban saw the emperor's appeal as a golden opportunity, a chance to heal the rift that had emerged between Western and Eastern churches in the Great Schism, to assert his own papal authority over the unruly barons and bishops of Western Christendom, and to drive back between Western and Eastern churches in the Great Schism, to assert his own papal authority over the unruly barons and bishops of Western Christendom, and to drive back the infidel and reclaim Christianity's most holy sites, most of all Jerusalem, lost to Muslim rule 400 years before. At Clermont in France, Pope Urban preached a sermon to a gathering of clergy and nobles. He called on Christian knights and foot soldiers to go east, to aid their brother Christians and free Jerusalem from Muslim rule. And he offered a unique spiritual incentive.
Is it...
For
I want to make it... Is it like if you die, you go to heaven?
unique spiritual incentive.
Like for sure.
Whoever, for devotion alone, not to gain honor or money, goes to Jerusalem to liberate the Church of God, can substitute this journey for all penance.
How convenient. Or, the Pope has got to know. He's got to know, like, all right. Like, there's no way he believes that. And he's just, I mean, that's a great way to, muster up an army, obviously.
He was offering Europe's knights, who lived in fear of damnation because of the violent lives they led, the chance to atone for their sins through holy war.
Everyone's thinking back, like, he's like, well, what do you think? This guy's like, come on, let's go. Well, I did, murder those like 2 families at one time. You're gonna burn in hell if you don't take back Jerusalem, I guess is the short of the
for their
short
sins
story.
Through holy war. What's more, their objective, Jerusalem, was a city that captivated the medieval imagination like no other. The most holy place on earth. The Pope's offer exhilarated his audience. His words were met with cries of Deus vult, Deus vult,
Deus vult.
God wills it, God wills it. The Pope's appeal was preached across Europe, sparking a wave of religious fervor. Thousands of lords, knights, and ordinary people vowed to travel to the Holy Land and...
That must have been a crazy time, obviously. But imagine, like, it must have not been the most peaceful time in places in Europe, and you're all fighting. And then suddenly, there's just this decree of holy war all the way over in Jerusalem. And everyone's like, all right, like, I want to get rid of my sins. And now they're all just marching.
Fight for Christ. Vowed
Right.
to travel to the Holy Land and fight for Christ. They identified themselves by wearing a cross, later becoming known as Cruce Signatus, Crusaders. A few of these men saw opportunity in the East for fame and fortune, but overwhelmingly they went in search of spiritual salvation, willing to undertake a long, expensive and perilous journey to save their souls from the fires of hell.
It's a pretty cool tactic to kind of put in, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know if cool is the right word, but it's going to make a hell of a soldier, and it'd be terrifying to go up against these guys who are just so sure, like nothing else matters. I'm sure, like, no matter how bad things get, it's like, well, all my sins are atoned for if I do this, and if I die in the process, then I'm sure that gets me into heaven. One sec, I get up my water. My water. Sorry.
Pope Urban had intended the crusade to be led by nobles and made up of knights and experienced soldiers. But the viral success of his appeal led thousands of ordinary townsfolk and peasants to take the cross, many inspired by a French priest known as Peter the Hermit, who became leader of this so-called People's Crusade.
What was his name?
Inspired by a French priest known as Peter the Hermit, who became leader of this so-called People's Crusade. In the Rhineland, some of these crusaders, fired up by old prejudices and talk of holy war, attacked local Jewish communities, slaughtering around 5,000 men, women and children, and extorting money from those they spared. These massacres were condemned by the church, but to little effect. In the summer of 1096, the People's Crusade, 20 to 40,000 strong, made its way east. The main contingent, led by Peter the Hermit, traveled along the river Danube. But they were ill-disciplined and poorly prepared. When they ran out of food in Hungary, they attacked and looted.
Where did they run out of food? I was gonna say that's ironic, but that wouldn't be ironic. Sorry.
When they ran out of food in Hungary, they attacked and looted Christian settlements. They continued to pillage the land of their supposed ally, the Byzantine Empire. When they reached Constantinople, the emperor quickly ferried them to Anatolia to be rid of them. In enemy territory, lacking discipline or leadership, their main force was soon ambushed and slaughtered by the Turks. Meanwhile, some of Europe's most powerful feudal lords were departing for the Holy Land at the head of their own contingents. They were much better armed and organized than the disastrous People's Crusade.
People's Crusade is just...
They included, from Lorraine, Godfrey of Bouillon, with his brothers Eustace and Baldwin of Boulogne. Hugh of Vermandois, younger brother of the French king. Count Robert of Flanders, and Duke Robert of Normandy, son of William the Conqueror. The wealthy Stephen of Blois. From Provence, Count Raymond of Toulouse, accompanied by the Crusade's spiritual leader, papal legate Adhemar of Le Puy. And from southern Italy, Norman lords Bohemond of Taranto and his nephew Tancred. The various contingents converged for their agreed rendezvous at Constantinople.
Get ready.
Together, they formed a huge army, perhaps 60,000 strong, probably the largest seen in Europe since the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The Byzantine Emperor Alexius had expected to welcome a small force of Western mercenaries who'd serve under Byzantine command.
No, sir.
But the giant Crusader force that began arriving in December 1096 made him nervous and distrustful, particularly the presence of Bohemond of Taranto, who'd spent much of his life attacking.
That's so crazy. So this guy, probably not even expecting anyone to show up. If anything, a few mercenaries, and just this giant army of Europe comes rolling in. He's like, oh my god, not the desired effect.
The presence of Bohemond of Taranto, who'd spent arriving in December 10 mercenaries who'd serve under Byzantine command. But the giant Crusader force that began arriving in December 1096 made him nervous and distrustful, particularly the presence of Bohemond of Taranto, who'd spent much of his life attacking the Byzantine Empire. Alexius gave the Crusaders money, supplies, and guides, but only after their leaders swore oaths of fealty and promised to return all Byzantine territory to the emperor, not keep it for themselves. Only then were they ferried across the Bosphorus into Anatolia. The Crusaders were a mighty military force, particularly the armored knights, who made up about 1/6 of their strength.
That's a lot.
But they'd have to adapt rapidly to the heat, terrain, and hit-and-run tactics of their Turkish enemy. In their favor, the Islamic world and the great Seljuk Empire itself was badly divided. Its Turkish governors, or atabegs, were busy fighting each other, as well as the Shia Fatimids of Egypt. None of them was prepared for the First Crusade, or had any real understanding of its strength or aims. The Crusaders' first success came at Nicaea, which fell after a 6-week siege. But the city surrendered to the Byzantine forces, cheating the Crusaders, as they saw it, of their rightful plunder. But the city surrendered to the Byzantine forces, cheating the Crusaders, as they saw it, of their rightful plunder. It was a further strain on the delicate relations between Crusaders and Byzantines. They began marching inland through intense summer heat.
It's like if you throw a party and like it's just supposed to be like a few friends, and then like the entire town shows up, and you're like, okay, just go down, go south, go that way.
In 2 columns, a vanguard under Bohemond of Taranto, and rear guard under Godfrey of Bouillon. Near Dorylaeum, Bohemond's vanguard was ambushed by the main Turkish army.
That was a great analogy, I know.
Ambushed by the main Turkish army.
Sorry if there was a noise there. Ah.
Based on Crusader chronicles, this is our best understanding of how the confused fighting unfolded. Bohemond, seeing he was about to be attacked by a large force of enemy cavalry.
Something about Epic History TV's battle scenes, I don't know if it's like the music kind of influences me. I know other channels have it great, like Eastery has it, Kings and Generals have the battle scenes. I don't know what it is. I just really like Epic History TV battle.
Seeing he was about to be attacked by a large force of enemy cavalry, sent an urgent message to the rear guard, asking for assistance. Then he formed up his knights and ordered his infantry into a defensive...
Sorry, I'm gonna go back here. I just need to... Who is this main guy?
Of how the confused Crusader chronicles, this is our best understanding of how the confused fighting unfolded.
Okay, obviously you can't know everything. Bohemond. Okay.
Bohemond, seeing he was about to be attacked by a large force of enemy cavalry, sent an urgent message to the rear guard, asking for assistance. Then he formed up his knights and ordered his infantry into a defensive formation behind them, protecting the camp followers. The Crusaders came under attack from all sides, facing a hail of arrows from Turkish horse archers, as well as javelins and hit-and-run strikes from their faster light cavalry. The knights were driven back onto their...
That's true. When I saw the horse... Sorry, I'm pausing again so quickly. No, I'm not sorry. All right, never mind. I take that back. I figured, well, these knights are just... Or these cavalry... The... Seljuk cavalry seems so much less armored and everything, and I didn't even think about how faster they would be, though, so maybe they have an advantage.
Own infantry. The knights were driven back onto their own infantry. Over several hours, losses mounted, but the Crusader line held. Meanwhile, Godfrey was racing up with the rearguard to join the battle. Troops were fed into the fighting as soon as they arrived. On the Turks' left flank, the Crusader advance was hidden by the terrain, so that they appeared suddenly, threatening the Turks with encirclement. When the Christian knights all charged together, the Turks panicked, turned, and fled. It was a major victory for the Crusaders, and allowed them to continue their advance across Anatolia without serious opposition.
So the Seljuks were no joke. I thought it might have been more of a, they amassed so many people, the Crusaders did, that the resistance wouldn't be as strong, but obviously it's a strong opponent.
And allowed them to continue their advance across Anatolia without serious opposition. At Heraclea, they defeated a small Turkish force, then split up. The main force struggled through the mountains of Cappadocia, losing many of their baggage animals and running dangerously low on supplies. Meanwhile, Baldwin of Boulogne and Tancred, probably out to seize land and plunder for themselves, travelled south into Cilicia, capturing the city of Tarsus and other settlements. Tancred later rejoined the main army. But Baldwin was invited by local Armenian Christians to travel to Edessa, where he was soon installed as Count Baldwin of Edessa, ruler of the First Crusader state. In October 1097, the rest of the Crusaders reached Antioch, the next stepping stone on the road to Jerusalem. But outside its walls, the First Crusade would come to the brink of disaster, decimated by disease and starvation, and encircled by their enemies. It would take a miracle to save them from annihilation. Research and artwork for this video comes from Osprey Publishing's extensive
Awesome video. Epic History TV, such a great channel. Go check them out. If you've watched my channel at all, you probably know them. They're a huge channel, over 1 million subs, deservedly so. Awesome video, guys. Join the Discord, subscribe, hit all the buttons, do all the things. Obviously, I'm going to come out with part 2 soon, either today or tomorrow. See you guys next time.